Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stacy Varghese, and I'm the Director of Leadership Annual Giving and Engagement at St. John's University. Today, we have Rocky Romanella, who will discuss how to discover the paths to power. Some housekeeping rules before we begin. If you have a question, please submit it in the bottom right in the chat section, and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. Lastly, a recording of today's session can be found on the Alumni Professional Development page on the university site. Now, I'm excited to introduce our speaker. Rocky Romanella is founder, president, and CEO of 360 Management Services, LLC, and author of the book, Tighten the Lug Nuts. 360 Management Services is a complete management services company with seasoned professionals focused on thought leadership, leadership development, and process improvement. Prior to this, Rocky served as CEO and director of Unitech Global Services, a provider of engineering, construction management, and installation services to companies specializing in the telecommunications field. Rocky also completed a 36-year at UPS career, where he served as president and general manager of UPS Supply Chain Solutions. Rocky has a bachelor's degree in executive management from St. John's University. He is also a two-time winner of the UPS Chairman's Award for Excellence and has received 2 prestigious certifications from Columbia University's Graduate School of Business and from Michigan State University. Before we hear from Rocky, I invite Paige Band, Gold Co-Chair, to give you insight on the club and its offerings. Paige, I will hand the webinar over to you now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Stacy. As Stacy said, my name is Paige, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Gold Committee, Gold being graduates of the last decade. And we're just here to, get everyone involved and stay connected with their St. John's alumni through various events that are catered to those of us that are recent graduates. So you can go ahead and follow us on any of the various social media platforms. We got Instagram and Twitter at St. John's Gold. Facebook and LinkedIn, I added those to the chat for reference. We have some upcoming events, including a summer fall social to get everyone together for a little happy hour. We have the President's Dinner and the Gold After Dark time after that. So be on the lookout for all of the fun stuff that we've got planned for this year. And with that, I will hand it over to Rocky.
Well, hello, ladies. Thank you very much for the introduction, Stacy and Paige. And so, Paige, I just figured that out. So, Gold graduate of last decade. So, I guess I would be part of the golf, not only because of my age, but also because graduates of the last 40 years. So, it's a pleasure to be here as part of the St. John's golf group. I'm a 1980 graduate of Staten Island, St. John's, Staten Island. So, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. Pleasure to be on this webinar with you. And I think the topic we're talking about today is an exciting topic. And it's one that everybody wonders about. How do I navigate through an organization, regardless of its size, small or large? And how do I position myself properly? What are the things that I need to do to enhance my potential or enhance my opportunity? I think all great companies should inspire their people to be the best, the brightest, most informed, and best educated people in the industry. And if you think about that for a second, I mean, that really is the responsibility of the organization to inspire you to do that. But you bring that self-motivation to aspire to be the best, the brightest, the most informed, the best educated in the industries that you're working. And so if you think about it from that perspective, there's work that you need to do or that I had to do or did along the way to help improve myself. Stacy and I were talking prior to starting this seminar, and it's interesting. I'm a keynote speaker today. Last week I was in delivered a breakout sessions and a keynote early in the week, and at the breakout sessions there were over 1,000 people in each breakout session, and I was probably one of the last people who ever would have viewed themselves as a keynote speaker or an individual speaking to large groups, large or small. But I was a much better one-on-one communicator. And so I recognized early on in my career that one of the things that I was going to have to be good at and work at was this ability to communicate in groups. And so I worked at it, and each of us finds those areas of opportunities to grow and develop as you start to think about, how am I going to position myself? What are the things I'm going to do so that I can achieve this goal of being the best, the brightest, the most informed, and one of the best educated people in the industries that I work in? And so for me, the trick was simple. I'm a better one-on-one communicator. And so when I look out at a group, I'm looking at people's faces. I'm making eye contact. And for me, I kind of block out the fact that there was 1,000 people in the room, and I'm making one-on-one contact with individuals. And for me, that's how I got through my public speaking. So there are going to be those areas where you'll identify and need to improve on, but that's what separates you from everyone else. The understanding of what it takes to move to that next level, to take on additional responsibility, and what are the things that you're willing to do to get there in terms of educating yourself, practicing, working, those kinds of things, finding the right mentor that could potentially help you in those areas. So let's talk about this concept. How do you navigate? How do you move yourself forward? How do you start to achieve your goals? I get asked this question quite a bit. I've had the opportunity to speak at colleges and high schools to juniors and seniors, and we talk a lot about, and especially recent graduates, we talk a lot about this. What are my next steps? And as Stacy told you in the introduction, I had a 36-year career at UPS. I think and people always smile and they kind of give you that look like there's not going to be a lot more of those kinds of careers maybe going forward. But the one thing I want to identify for you in that 36-year career, and just that thought of working at a company for 36 years, is an important part of this conversation we'll start with now. And that is that I had a 36-year career at UPS. I didn't agree with everything that happened at UPS. I just didn't disagree enough to leave. Now think about that. I didn't agree with everything that happened at UPS. I didn't disagree enough to leave. And I think that's one of the first steps that you identify as an individual inside an organization. It's very similar to when you did your college visits and you went to different universities or different schools. And I know when we took our kids to universities or different schools, you could see when we walked around the campus that they ended up going to, they just felt like they fit. You can just see in their face, I belong here. And so I belonged at UPS. I felt like I fit. They never asked me to violate a policy, do something unethical. They recognized hard work and desire to learn. And so for me, I fit. And so as you begin this journey and you're inside an organization, you may not agree with everything that happens, but you may not disagree enough to leave because you feel like you fit. So that's the first step, I think, in the process, is when you're going through that interview process and you're having conversations with individuals inside the organization. It's good for you to be asking questions that would be those types of questions that you're trying to understand. Do I fit? Do I fit here morally, ethically? Do I feel comfortable in this organization? Yes, I have a lot to learn, maybe. Yes, it may be different than I thought I originally was going to do. I originally went to St. John's to be a high school history teacher and a baseball coach. Changed my major to management. I was working part-time at UPS and realized that the best leaders inside UPS at that time that I worked for were just real good teachers. They got their people to connect the dots, understand what it was they were trying to accomplish. And so I changed my major to business, although I never changed my teaching passion. So for me, the classroom was just a different venue now. It was inside of business. So you may change the different jobs that you have over the course of your career, but the values you have, your ethics, who you are, what you stand for as a person generally won't change. And so what happens is that's that fit. The same way, do you fit that university? Do you, I always say a good double check, a good way to know is if you go to a meeting and you meet people for the first time. Now it's a little more difficult. We're still in that era where we're not putting a lot of people in a room. But if you go to a meeting and you meet people for the first time from your organization, and by midday you say to yourself, I feel like I know these people my whole life. That's probably because you fit. That's probably because you have the same values. You feel comfortable with the things that they're talking about and how they're talking about them. And so I think that's important. So I think that's the first step as you're beginning this process is, do I fit in this organization? Can I make that statement that, hey, I didn't agree with everything that they do, but I don't disagree enough to leave. They never make me feel uncomfortable or feel unvalued. So I think that's the first step in it. I think then the next steps are more planned out for you. It's more of a strategy that you put together for a career or for where you want to go. My dad, rest his soul, told me two things when I started at UPS. He said, hey, whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you, and then learn your job and learn some more. And so for me, we had a promotion from within policy at UPS. I just took advantage of that policy. I scared at times? Sure, I was. But I think that's part of you learning the organization you're working for. But because for me, UPS believed in me way ahead of me believing in myself. And as you grow inside an organization, you start to realize that as you grow, take on additional responsibility. And now, for example, some of you are 10 years out of school, you're in management leadership roles, you have people reporting to you, you're doing career development activities with them. There are many times when you're going to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And UPS did that for me. So every time they tapped me on the shoulder and said, we have a new responsibility for you. One of the roles I had at UPS is we purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and rebranded to what's today the UPS store. When I got called down to Atlanta, our corporate office, and they told me, hey, we just purchased mailbox, et cetera. We want you to run it. I had no idea about franchising. It was completely out of what my traditional responsibilities were at UPS. But all I could hear my dad over my shoulder saying, hey, just say yes and thank you. So I looked at them and said, hey, if you think I'm the right person, I'll give you 100% effort. I'll do whatever I can to learn it. And they looked at me and I knew that they would believe in me and help me bridge that gap. And so as a leader, you sometimes have to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And that's where you bridge that gap of confidence and knowledge. And at some point they break even the person, and then you step back as a leader and you let them fly. The same happens with you. You get tapped on that shoulder and you're that person they're believing in. You've got to it's uncomfortable. You're outside your comfort zone, but you have to stretch yourself. And it may not be exactly uh, the avenue you thought you would travel inside the organization, but it's an opportunity to grow and develop and learn new things that's at some point down the road will help you. And so for me, whatever they asked me to do was yes and thank you, and then learn your job and learn some more. And so those two stuck with me and helped become the core of my journey or my process as I move through an organization. And so I know that there's various tenure of individuals on this call. And so at some point, you're that individual that someone's believing in. And so you're kind of coming outside your comfort zone and learning as much as you can. And, that's part of the best, the brightest, most informed, best educated. Well, that's probably the most informed, the best educated, because I became an inside the UPS, somewhat of a resident expert on franchising and how to educate myself on franchising. And so I think that gave me that chance to start to be that best, brightest, most informed, the best educated person in the industries that I was working in. So I think that that's an important concept. And so for those of you who you're getting that tap on the shoulder that the organization or that mentor or that person you're working for believes in you, it's going to be uncomfortable. Find that individual, find those people who believe in you enough that are willing to help you bridge that gap. And as a leader, when you start to identify those key people inside your organization, recognize that part of what you'll do is believe in them until they're ready to believe in yourself. So I think that's that first step is, do you fit? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like you belong inside an organization? I think when you think about it from a longer term perspective, I would ask you this question. Think of the word you want someone to use to describe you at the end of your career. Now think about that. What's the word I want someone to use to describe me at the end of my career? Now, in some cases, you've just graduated in, 2016, 2018, 20, maybe like me, 1980. But think about that for a second. What's the word you want someone to use to describe you at the end of your career? And that begins the process for you. Because if you think about it, and the word for me was thoughtful. I wanted to be considered a thoughtful leader. I wanted to think through my decisions from its widest consequences. And for me, I have this concept, and Stacy said, I wrote this book called Tighten the Lug Nuts. It's about my journey through business, and it's not about me personally. It's written in a third person. I never liked saying I would do this or I think you should do this. It was written from a third person. So therefore, it becomes more of thoughts and opportunities and people I met along the way, and some of the coaching and counseling and mentoring that I received or I did as well. But I think what's important is when you think of that word you want someone to use to describe you at the end of your career, then throughout your career you start to build that mosaic to that word. And so everything you do, as I said in the book, I talk about this concept of balanced leadership. You want your people to think like a customer, you want your people to feel like valued individuals, but you inspire them to act like an owner in all they do. And when they act as if they own the business, they make much better decisions. And so for me, there's that balance: customers, people, share owners, and stakeholders. And so as I think of this word thoughtful, so for me, when I made decisions, I want them to be thoughtful decisions. So therefore, I made sure all three key constituents are represented. Are my people represented in this conversation? Do I understand the customer and what their needs and desires are for their business? And then is this decision that I'm making, or is this vision I'm having for the organization, do I take it as if it was my company? If I own this company and I was writing a check out of my checking account, would I make this decision? Small business owners know that better than anyone, obviously, because no one's more vested, no one's more all in than a small business owner. And for that reason, I have just tremendous respect for small business owners. They are truly the committed individuals, right? If you think about it, right? I mean, at UPS and at Unitech as a CEO, I had P&L responsibilities, but you had an organization there to kind of backstop you or help you through it. As a small business owner, I mean, you're all in. You push everything you have across the table, and at that point, at the end of the day, you pay your people, you pay your vendors, and what's left is what you bring home, and that's the ultimate all in. That's the ultimate, P&L responsibility. And so when people act like an owner, if you can get them there, then what ends up happening is they make better decisions on behalf of your organization. And so for me, that word was thoughtful. So I challenge you in a positive way to think of that word you would like people to use at the end of your career. And during this long career that you'll have and successful career you'll have, you may not think of that word all the time. But you will have those moments where you look back and you tilt your head and you start to realize that in all your actions, you're really building that mosaic to that word. I would liken it to a brand. If you think about a brand and you think about what a brand stands for, and if you think about, as I said last week, I was speaking at Napa Auto Parts, and the minute you see everyone in their yellow and blue and the Napa logo, you immediately recognize the brand, understand it. If you see a UPS vehicle, if you see an American Express logo, so you understand what it means. And that brand becomes strong and important, and then your brand has an identity. Then you start to relate when you see the brand, the logo maybe, or you hear the brand name, you start to identify what that brand means. Some brands get to the point where they become synonymous with a product, even though it's really the brand name. I mean, if you think about it, if someone sneezes, you go and you say, "Hey, can you get me a Kleenex?" Well, Kleenex is the name of the company, right? You really want a tissue. Showing my age here a little, but hey, can you Xerox this for me? Well, Xerox is the name of a company. Not even in copiers to the degree they once were, if at all. And so if you think about it, the brand has an identity and the brand has a recognition. And so you will, as well as an individual inside an organization, it's what people will come to talk about when they talk about you is your brand and your brand identity and what your brand stands for. And it's important for you to understand that. And at the pinnacle of that brand identity will be that word, so, hopefully people, when they describe me, would be, yeah, he's this, and this, and many of those descriptions will center around the word thoughtful, right? So I think that's maybe one of the first steps to start to think about. Now, it may change over the course of time slightly. You may pick a word early in your tenure in your career that you think is the right word to use, but as time goes on, you may change it slightly, but in general, your vision of who you are, what you stand for, and what are the things that you won't compromise become the core of who you are as a person and a leader and a person inside an organization. And it becomes that fabric of you as that individual. But that brand becomes synonymous with you, and it becomes how they describe you. Another example would be if you started working, let's say inside an organization I was working, or became part of an organization I was running, whether it's a small one inside a company or a company itself, and you said, hey, I just got a job at so-and-so company, I'm working for Rocky, what's he like? People would list off these 2 or 3 things, right? They would say, that becomes the brand, and it becomes the brand promise and the brand identity. Now, like a brand, once you break your brand promise, it's very difficult to get that customer back. And so think about that, take a moment, think about now that company that, airlines struggle with that all the time. You'll fly one particular airline, you get into their loyalty program, you become a very loyal Delta, pick them on JetBlue, United, pick a company. And one of the reasons that keeps you loyal is they execute to their brand promise, they fulfill their brand promise, but B, when there is a disconnect or when there is a service failure, they handle that better than anyone else. Because everyone knows there's no perfect people and there's no perfect company, but most times you execute to your brand. So as an individual, most times you're executing to your brand. You do what you say you're going to do. You have integrity of your word. People can trust you. However, every now and then you have a service disconnect. It's how you handle that service disconnect that maintains that brand promise and maintains your brand identity. The minute you break that brand promise, no different than a company, then you end up losing that company or that customer. In our world, you may end up losing your credibility. You may end up losing your ability to manage. You lose your ability to execute inside that organization because people they don't trust you. They don't recognize you. They recognized you as this brand. They just don't recognize you now because of this brand promise that was broken and your inability to handle the service disconnect or come back from that break. So I think that's so important. So let's take a moment here and maybe just take a second just to recap what we spoke about. I think at the end of the day, the thing you have to keep in mind is you really want to understand, do I fit in this organization? Are the values, are the ethics, are the culture, is the mission, do I fit in here? And if you fit in there, then that helps you get through some of the difficult times or some of the times that you may not disagree with everything that they're doing, but you don't disagree enough to leave because they aren't those foundational things to you, right? They're not asking you to break a law, violate a policy, manage a, unhealthy work environment, those kinds of things. The minute you feel uncomfortable or, unsafe then you start to believe, hey, you know what, this isn't a place for me. And so that's when people start to leave an organization. People either leave an organization initially for those reasons, the way you transfer out of a college because you believed you belonged there, but at the end of the day, you're moving into your freshman, sophomore year, and you're realizing, I really don't fit here. It's not exactly what I thought it was going to be, and you make that move. So that's that first step in the process. The second step in that process is, do you feel like you belong? And then I feel like I can make a difference, and I start to execute my brand and my brand promise. And so you start to feel like you belong. And once you belong, you start to feel good about yourself. Once you're feeling good about yourself, you begin that journey and that process of, you know what? One of my aspirations is look, someone's going to be the best at it. Why not me? Not because they're smarter than me, not because they work harder than me. It's because that's my vision. If I'm going to do something, I might as well be the best at it. So as you start to enact that belief, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be the best at it. Someone's going to be the best. Why not me? You start to think about, okay, part of what makes me the best is my aspiration to be the best, the brightest, most informed, and best educated person in this industry. And so on the education side, you're learning maybe about the company, you're learning maybe about the products and services that are inside your company, you're learning how to navigate inside your company, but you're also learning what's going on in the industry. You know, when I had the supply chain side for UPS, uh, obviously I'm understanding our customers and their needs. I'm learning about, you know, the industry in general. But now more importantly, if you think about today with all the things that are happening in the supply chain world, we're understanding, you know, ocean, understanding how that part of the supply chain works, understanding what's going on at the ports in LA and Long Beach and some of those supply chain issues becomes an important part. You know, if you were in the accounting side of the business, understanding Sarbanes-Oxley and how some of those rules and regulations work, you know, in pharmacy, what's going on in the world of pharmacy. We're going direct to patients in some cases. So in many cases, and so, you know, we're fulfilling over a 90-day period. I don't see the customer as much as I used to. So there's many different changes that are happening in the industry as well as inside your organization as they try to address those. And so you're trying to stay, that's at the best, brightest, most informed, best educated. It's not only educated in what you're currently doing, what the organization is doing, but you're trying to, you know, kind of educate yourself in the industry that I work. I mean, the best is just giving it 100%. You know, look, there's no substitute for hard work. I mean, no matter how much technology there is, there's no substitute for hard work. But hard work without enthusiasm is just that hard work. So there's many times, especially early on, where you're going to have to bring that energy and that enthusiasm along with the hard work. And so that's, you know, you're aspiring to be the best. You're aspiring to be the most educated, but the brightest, most informed. And that, I think, is an important part of it as well. You stay informed by understanding what's going on inside the organization, any information they send you, you try to stay current on. You're trying to understand what's going on inside maybe a client you're working with that's an important client inside the organization. So this thirst for knowledge never ends, right? You're that lifelong learner. You're out there and you're trying as hard as you can to learn. I think the other thing that helps you is you start to understand the true value of mentorship. You try to understand that, you know, understanding what it means to find that individual inside the organization that can help you through this process. It could be inside the organization, it could be outside the organization. It could be, you know, depending on what your needs are, what you're working on. It could be someone that is not even in your industry, but has a good view of understanding leadership potentially if you're in a leadership role, or understanding, for example, has a long career in accounting and finance, those kinds of things, or sales, has had that kind of, no pun intended, rocky road, and can help you through those things. And then someday you'll be a mentor. You'll be that individual that someone can go and, you know, and ask questions of, or you can have those kinds of conversations when they're starting to build, you know, build out new parts of their career plans and those kinds of things. So I think, you know, it's such an important opportunity for you to utilize mentors and mentorship as you're growing. But the real joy gets to be when you get to be that mentor and you make a difference, a significant difference in someone's career and someone's life. It's so fulfilling to do. And so I think that the next step, kind of in a quick summary, is the brand. So now you're beginning that brand journey. And your brand journey begins with that identification of what's that word I want someone to use to describe me at the end of my career, and then you're building that mosaic throughout it. And so then what you're doing is you're starting to build your brand. You're starting to build your brand identity. You're starting to build your brand promise. What can people expect when they engage with Rocky Romanella? What do people expect when they engage with Stacy or Paige or whoever that individual is? Though that becomes your brand promise. And so it's such an important part of who you are, and people depend on you. They depend on that brand promise. They'll make their decisions knowing that they can depend on your brand promise. They identify with you from a brand perspective. And then, as I said, you're going to make mistakes. We all do. It's how you handle that service disconnect, or how you handle that that break of your brand promise that not only, kind of keeps the customer or keeps that individual or keeps your organization believing in you, but actually makes you stronger, better, because now they recognize you're going to make a mistake, things are going to happen. How did you handle that? And I think that's what differentiates good companies to great companies, right? They do well when things are good. They handle they do their job the way they've been asked to do it. But great companies are those individuals that are always trying to go to where the puck's going, to take the organization to that next level, to take what they currently do and improve it, to take their brand and continually grow and develop and become a better version of themselves. And I think that's such an important part of that kind of brand growth and your growth inside an organization. And so I think those are kind of the three steps. Do I belong? Do I have that aspiration to be the best, the brightest, most informed, the best educated I can be? And then do I understand what my brand is, what my brand promise is, and what's my brand identity? What can people count on in my brand promise? And how do I handle a service disconnect? And I think that will help you navigate inside an organization. That will help you to understand, how do I move forward? And do I want to move forward in this organization because I feel like I fit? I think that those are probably a good roadmap or a good process for you to think through as you begin this journey or as you take on another responsibility or another assignment. Just two quick other topics before we answer some questions and wrap up a little bit. I want to be considerate of your time. I would say another area of great importance is for me, whenever I started a new assignment, and so as you kind of grow in your career, you'll take on different responsibilities at different assignments. The first thing I would do, is to lay out my 100-day plan. So I would lay out on paper. So for example, when I retired from UPS, I was recruited to be the CEO of the telecom company that Stacy spoke about in my introduction. I laid out a 100-day plan and presented that to the board. This is my first 100 days. This is what I'm looking to accomplish. Now, as we talked about, I talk a lot about in my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, this concept of balanced leadership. In my plan, those first 100 days, you see the customers are represented, people are represented. So for example, I would articulate on this 100-day plan, in my first 100 days, I'm going to visit our top 3 customers. I'm going to reach out and understand the last 3 customers we lost, and I'm going to understand the top 3 customers we want to win. Tell me who they are. And then I look at, then by segment, tell me who are, what our segmentation of customers could be. And so customers over the first 100 days will be represented. Then I laid out people. I want to understand our largest facilities, our smallest facilities, where we have the highest employee turnover. If we had an employee relations index or we had a survey that went out from an employee opinion perspective, let me take a look at that. What's our safety picture look like, in a manufacturing or in different environments. Safety is a core value. It's something that you never compromise. Nothing tells you people you care more about them than you will not let them work unsafely. And so, I always look at our safety numbers. And then the last thing I always look at is overtime. What's our overtime? I don't look at overtime from a cost perspective. I look at it from a people perspective. If you're working 10, 11 hours a day or 10 hours a day, it's really hard to have work-life balance. I will tell you, it's one of my concerns with remote. I think that this is, my thoughts on this. I'm not sure you all agree, but my thoughts on this are simply this. The good employee is just working more because they're always tethered to their computer now and it's always on. At least before, when they were going to an office, they go home. Maybe they left the computer behind or maybe they left it off, but now they're home and the computer is always on. And so the good employees are just working harder and probably more. The bad employees who weren't really paying attention in the office scenario aren't really paying attention now. In fact, when you're on a Zoom call with that individual, it's amazing how their camera never works. It's probably because they're at Costco. And so that person's maybe getting away with more than they ever did. And then you have the group in the middle that are doing the best they can and doing their job, but they just don't feel connected. Now, I agree, we'll probably never go back to where we once were, where everybody was in the office 5 days a week and there was no flexibility at all. But never going in or never having interaction may be a little bit too extreme on the other side. But I do think the key is, as a leader, is that you have to understand that part. What are my people doing? Do I recognize what they're doing? And so part of when I do my 100-day plan, I want to kind of understand those things. How are we interacting with our people? How do we have a career? I'll ask one of the business unit leaders, or for example, the HR maybe person, hey, how do we handle career development discussions? How do we handle raises? Do we have a formal approach to that or not? And so those things all kind of give me, in my first 100 days, an indication of what's happening with our people. Hey, your greatest asset in an organization are your people. That's what differentiates you from everybody else, is your people. And then finally, you look at share owners and stakeholders. So it's customers, people, share owners, stakeholders. And so you look at, the financials to see how the organization is run. And so each week I would sit on this 100-day plan and see, am I going too far in one of the three constituents? Hey, so far I've got, 30 days in of my 100, and I've spent, the vast majority of my time, for example, maybe with the CFO, or vast majority of my time with the customers. And so it then allows me to make my plan for the following weeks, that, hey, I got to get out and make sure that I hit these targets that I laid out. So the 100-day plan is a great opportunity for you as you're navigating through your career, you're taking on additional responsibilities, or maybe the best case was for you to leave this organization and move on to the next organization. My recommendation would be lay out your first 100 days and then understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and what are the things that you need to learn about this new job, new role, new opportunity that you'll get inside an organization or in a new organization, or if you've changed, completely a new, you're in a new industry completely. And so those, I think, are that's an important step. So that could be a really helpful step for you as you're navigating your career to some new heights there. So I think that's very important. And finally, I would say that at some point, it may be early to do it now, but at some point you have to identify and answer three key questions. The first question is, who am I? And companies have to do the same thing. And companies can do a very good job at articulating this. I mean, think about the company you're working for today. You think about the values and mission statements that St. John's has. Pick a company out there, and so they articulate them and they lay them out really well. But you as an individual have to really understand, well, who am I? Who is Rocky Romanella? And then what do I stand for? And so, each of us has that. And part of this all becomes tied in, as you're starting to see. It all kind of ties itself together with this brand, right? And what can people count on when they interact with me as the brand, as the product, right, inside an organization. And so who am I? What do I stand for? The last question is probably the one the most difficult, and it's the one that you'll get challenged on throughout your career. And as a company, you get challenged on, more than you'd like to be. And that's, what won't I compromise? And I think that's so important, right? You have to know that. For me in a business, I won't compromise safety. I'll walk away from a particular product or job or a customer before I do something in an unsafe manner. I recognize as a leader, I'm not allowed to silently sanction bad behavior. So if I see a driver that doesn't have a seatbelt on, even though they just may be on property, moving the vehicle, you stop. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for what you do on behalf of the organization. Hey, you gotta put your seatbelt on. Because once I see it and don't address it, then I just silently sanction a bad behavior that someday could get that person, into an accident and get hurt. So I think that number 3 is the one you really got to think about. And maybe if it's really early in your career, maybe more difficult to answer that. But I think it's so important to understand that. And when I work with small businesses and we go through this process, or even large companies, and you do this question, who am I? What do we stand for? Almost everyone in the organization can answer 1 and 2. 3 is the one that's interesting. You could be a company that's an e-commerce company that is distributing products and services, and you as CEO will never compromise these products not being environmentally safe. there could be people inside your organization that, well, we're not really quite sure if they're 100% environmentally safe, but they're close. Well, no, if you'll never compromise that, then that's something you have to articulate. It's something that you have to establish, and people have to know that about you, that part of your brand is this. And so I think that would be something, if it's early on in your career, maybe difficult for you right now, but you clearly have to understand who are you, what you stand for, and what are the things you won't compromise. And if you think about what we started with, this whole kind of brand and talking about your brand identity and your brand promise. Well, part of what you won't compromise are the things that you laid out as part of your brand, right? So it's a circle of your self-branding kind of idea. So it becomes your roadmap for not only your personal journey, your professional journey, but also your navigation through an organization and through your career. And so I think that's what it becomes then a very much purpose-driven kind of process for you, but one which you're very open-minded, you're willing to try new things, you're willing to kind of push yourself outside your comfort zone, you're willing to take on different responsibilities. However, with the eye that, hey, it's within my brand promise. I'm not going to compromise who I am, what I stand for, and I'm going to feel comfortable because my values, my ethics, the things that I view as important are respected inside this organization. So that would be my recommendations or my thoughts on the journey and how to proceed on the journey. Have fun, make it fun, make it happen. Don't take yourself so seriously that you're going to make mistakes, but you got to have fun. You got to work hard, but you got to bring energy and enthusiasm, and that's how you get to your Coach John Wooden, legendary coach UCLA, once had a pyramid of success, and at the top of that pyramid is competitive greatness. And he defines competitive greatness as, I think, a great ending here for the definition of what you're trying to achieve in your career, which is being your best. So competitive greatness is being your best when your best is needed. And so as you take on this journey, that's what you want to try to accomplish, being your best when your best is needed. So with that, Stacy, I think it doesn't look like we have many questions. I will, last week, I had one question that came up. So I had 3 breakout sessions. As I said, each breakout session had 1,000, the largest breakout sessions I did. But I would say that we had one or two common questions. I think one of them was this whole kind of brand, and we talked a little bit about the brand, your personal brand. But the second one was, I get asked all the time. So these are small business owners that are trying to hire individuals. And so the question they asked, and if I could answer that question quickly, Stacy, and then I'll turn it back to you for wrapping up, or if any other questions came in. So the question I get asked quite a bit is, well, in today's generation, nobody wants to work, or today's generation, not as committed or motivated, as previous generations. And so I don't agree to that at all. In fact, it's funny, I tell people all the time, June 15th, 1976, I started working at UPS as a part-timer, working my way through St. John's in Staten Island. I had a beard, a ponytail, and I knew every word to Stairway to Heaven. Nobody thought I was going to be anything, including myself, to be frank with you. So every generation has individuals who may not represent the generation the way that 90% of you would want them to. But if you look at what you're currently doing, look at how hard you're working, I look at my children, I look at other people's kids, I look at the people I deal with and work with. Your generation and this generation, no one's more prepared than you are. No one has a better view of technology or understands technology better. I think no one's more prepared. I think the difference is you ask good questions. Now, in my generation, it was yes or no, sir, 3 bags full. Tell me what you need me to do, I'm going to do it, right? When someone tapped me on the shoulder, I moved 9 times with UPS. They literally told you on a Monday to be someplace on a Tuesday. Hey, look, the way I was brought up, I need the job, I'm going to do it. your generation, and you just ask good questions. Hey, what's it about? Why is this a good job? How does this fit in my career? How do you see this helping me in my career? You know, how long do you think it'll be? How does it impact my family? Those are just good, thoughtful questions. Those aren't questions that you're challenging someone on. You're asking good questions. Now, in retrospect, I probably should have asked some of those questions. And I think if my wife Debbie was on this call with you, she would have said, yeah, I think you should have too. So I think that today's generation and the people you hire today are more prepared, better equipped, and ready to take on the challenges. You just have to understand that they're just asking you good questions. Now, you're going to have people that are disrespectful or ask it in the wrong way. Put them on a side. They're 10% maybe. The rest of the individuals, they could be nervous, they could be a little scared, it could be their first big move. They're just asking good questions. So manage them with the understanding that they're not challenging you. Give them the benefit of the doubt that they just want to know. Isn't that what you want? Good people who are inquisitive, good people who are asking questions. If you're asking the right questions, it means you're engaged. It doesn't mean you're challenging me. So I, as a leader, have to understand if I'm going to manage today's workforce, I need to understand what motivates them, not what motivates me, what motivates them. I treat them with dignity and respect. I care about them as individuals. I never say people work for me, they're in my care. But ultimately, I have to motivate them and understand what's important to them and understand, the questions that they ask and why they're asking them. It's because they just want to know. They're inquisitive, they're prepared. If it's someone who's doing it for a different reason, well, then address them. Don't damn the whole generation of people because a few people didn't work out. So I would leave you with that because that's probably the number one question I get is that question. I think every generation has excellent people. I think every generation has good people. I think every generation has hardworking people. I think that you just have to recognize they're more prepared, they're going to ask better questions, and they're going to probably make your company a much better company because of their preparation. The book is called Tighten the Lug Nuts. You can visit my website, tightenthelugnuts.com. I also just started 3 to 5 minute podcast that drops every Tuesday and Thursday on leadership topics, leadership thoughts, leadership potential things. For example, we just did one on SWOT analysis. It was 4-parter, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and barriers or threats. So I tried to build a website, tightenthelugnuts.com, and write the book in a way that could be helpful for you and as a workbook. My email address is rockyromanella@gmail.com. And if you have any questions, concerns, or something that you would want to discuss, or something that's happening in your world now that you'd like to quick discussion on, please feel free to email me. And as I said, there's a lot of information on the website, so feel free to use it. And if I can help you in any way, please let me know. Stacy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. I do see one question that came in. How do you move laterally when you don't fully agree with company direction, but as you say, you don't disagree enough to leave?
I think, well, that's a great question. So I think, and look, it happened to me throughout my career at UPS, so I give, quick example. I mean, wasn't, we went public in 97, 90, whatever it was. And, I was at that meeting when we made the, kind of announcement and went through it. And yeah, I didn't think we should be a public company. I felt like, we were better served as a private company. But then once we went through, so my answer would be simply this. Once you go through the discussion and you privately or in the right setting, ask the questions why we're doing what we're doing. And then once I understood why we're doing what we're doing, I may not have agreed that if I was the CEO, I would do that. But then once I understand why we're doing it, then I closed that chapter of the discussion, and then I put all my energy and efforts to moving the company in that direction. And understand that someday, if I get to that level inside an organization, I may do things differently. I kind of record them as a learning process. But then, as long as they're not asking me to violate a process or a principle or a policy or do something unethical, okay. I just kind of want to understand in the right setting. I ask the right question laterally or whatever. Why are we doing this? Why do we believe this is the right thing to do? Then once we leave that room, then I'm their best cheerleader. I waste no time or energy going back trying to discuss it again or try to change their mind. I understand it now. I may not think it's the way I would have went, but certainly if they're committed and it's something we want to do, I'm in. Then you know what? Someone's going to be the best at this new process. Why not me then? And so that's how I work through that. I put all my energy on being the best at whatever we're now attempting to do. And so I think that that's a good way to stay focused. It's a good way. And sometimes you look back and you say, you know what, not knowing what I know today and after done, it's not a bad idea. I will tell you the last thing, not to belabor the question, because I think it's a great question, is so when people would bring me an idea, and they would take me through their idea, and I would be listen intently for, are the customers represented, are people represented, are the share owners, stakeholders represented. So let's say two of them were customers and share owners, then I would ask the question, well, how about our people? What's the training? Do they understand why we're doing this? And then we got to the final decision process, okay, hey, I would like to do this. And I would ask them the question, if you own this was your candy store, would you write the check? And if they said yes, it may not be exactly how I would have done it. But then I always look at them and think, well, you're so committed. You came in here prepared. You believe in it with all your heart. It's not the way I would have done it, but it's something I think I might have gotten to on my own at some point. So let's do it. So at that point, I give you my complete support because you're committed, you're focused on it, you did your homework, you're prepared. I view that same way inside an organization when I was inside a company growing up, that, hey, I don't know if I would have done it this way. But then again, you know what? We discussed it, so I'm all in. Let's go do it. Someone's going to be the best. Why not me?
Great, thank you. So I think with that said, we can wrap up. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and a special thank you to Rocky for such an informative presentation. For his complete bio, please go to www.stjohns.edu/APD series. Here you will also find a schedule of upcoming webinars and past recordings. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Rocky.
Oh, thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Paige.